Hey, thanks everyone for joining us on this January to tuning in to the ARC Monthly Update.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy New Year to you, Andrew.
How you doing this year? Good? Better?
So far, so good.
Good.
Yeah, so far, so
Absolutely.
good. You know, it brings up a good question, actually. I wanted to ask you, are
Yep.
you a New Year's resolution person?
Sorta, if that's an answer. I
Okay.
mean, basically, this is how I look at it. I'm not one to say I'm going to lose like 15 pounds or I'm going to, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. That's not like the New Year's resolution type
Yeah.
of person I am. But I would say that I do try to like kind of set my year up and say, this is the one big thing I'm hoping to accomplish. More of like an attitude for the year, not so much like a specific thing to accomplish. More like big picture, not little picture. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm New Year's resolution.
Okay.
I like to think about my year and say, let's have a year that looks like this or try to have a year look like this. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm more of a wing it kind of guy.
Wing it
you know?
guy?
Yeah. There's some things that I know that I just have to do all year. You know,
Sure,
some of the
sure.
typical stuff just to feel like myself.
Mm.
But yeah. So other than that, I typically, I've done them a couple times in the past, and
Yeah.
I actually do think they're helpful. Could probably do some more, but I just think a lot of it's personality wise too. Some people are very driven by what they write down.
Exactly.
Other people
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of are always going for stuff too. So I'm not against them, but yeah, kind of more of a wing it guy
Yeah.
myself. So
I would agree. I'm like I said, more big picture,
yeah,
not so much detail.
yeah.
Like this year, I just want to have fun this year. It's been like after 2020, it's like, you know what? We should all just be focusing
That's
on
a
just
good resolution.
not like have fun at others' expenses, but just have fun, man. Just
Yeah.
like enjoy the year, enjoy even our everyday, what we do every day, right? You going to work every day,
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah,
I mean, because at least it's not 2020 again. So.
that's right.
Gotta
That's
enjoy
right.
it.
I like that. That's a really good resolution. All right, so let's move into some industry news. We're going to start again on the global supply chain.
Yeah.
I know we've been talking about this really in every update so
Feels
far.
almost like ad nauseum we've been talking
Yeah,
about this, just because it's such a demanding topic.
And everyone's kind of waiting to see if it's going to slow down, but
Yeah.
it has not. And if anything, it's upticked even more.
Yeah.
So we just had some stats come out. These are really just crazy. I want to run these by you.
Hit me with them. Let's
So
hear
the
it.
cost of shipping a container of goods has risen 80% since early November, which means it's nearly tripled over a year.
Obviously, I'm on the front lines, right? I just didn't know it was that much.
Yeah.
In a single year, triple. That's incredible.
Yeah, and just to see an 80% rise
Yeah.
over the course of
3
a
months.
few months, just
And
is
usually
wild.
you'll start seeing it drop down after the holiday
Right.
shipping season. You see this kind of lull happen
Yeah.
as they gear up for the Chinese holiday. But
Yeah. And just to give some more context on that, so freight is just still obviously backed up at the ports, showing no signs of
Everywhere,
slowing
yeah.
down. And LA and Long Beach, every single anchorage space was full. So the anchorage space is basically when you can't dock and unload, they ask you to wait in a certain spot, drop anchor, and you
Yep.
get called in. Well, on a certain day last week, there's 42 ships that were waiting to be unloaded. They're
with their mountains of containers
mountains of
sitting
containers.
there, already delayed most likely.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
And that was one of the contingency locations. They have 10, and out of the 10, 6 of them, which each have more locations, are all totally full.
Oh my goodness.
So-
So if you're a shipper importing, know that
It's not
most
just
likely
you.
your freight is sitting in somewhere
Yeah.
in the West Coast in an anchor spot. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Or in a warehouse.
Or in a
Because
warehouse.
there was no warehouse space for 60 miles outside of the
oh
LA
my
port.
goodness, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. So
So yeah, I mean, it's exactly what we're experiencing, right? Between that and then the rail and drayage, it's incredible. And even when you go overseas, like we were just dealing with this, I think yesterday or something like that, we were talking about this internally. The trucking in Shanghai is just booked solid, to where it's
Wow.
it's one thing to have issues at the port. It's another thing to have local assets, local resources be so hammered that you're not even able to get to the port because the containers aren't ready because of the
Yeah.
delay.
nobody can pick
It's
them
just-
up.
with I think the global economy trade is like 92 trillion or something like that. I don't know what the number is. It's ridiculously high, right? And we've never seen like a shift or impact like we've seen recently when it comes to the global supply chain. And that's the one thing to always think about is it ends up being, you go to Home Depot to try to buy
Yeah.
flooring or a faucet or,
Yeah.
clothing from the Gap. I heard Gap has just been like, it's been unbelievable for them trying to get their goods in.
Yeah.
It's going to affect everybody.
It's affecting everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah. So if you're a shipper out there, just know it's not just you. Literally
Yeah,
every
yeah.
single company. I think there's companies that say, "Well, we're a big company. We can pull some." No.
And if you're a little company, think it's big. No, they're
not.
struggling just the same.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
struggling right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Let's talk a minute about the trade show world.
Yeah.
You know, we actually have a vaccine that's been rolled out already for COVID, and we're seeing some glimmers of hope. We're seeing a couple shows actually being scheduled again.
Yeah. You know, I think it really ties to consumer confidence, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we want people traveling on airplanes. We want people staying in hotels.
Yeah.
And you need both those things for trade shows to really be successful. I know that we have personally been involved in a few trade show plans that are more like May time, May, June, July, those type of areas. With our discussions we've been having, people in the industry are hoping for a fall that can kind of resemble the falls of the past.
Yeah.
They don't think it'll ever get to those heights for another year or so, but they're hoping to get there. And the important part of that is just, it's not just the trade shows, it's everything else, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
Jerry's Sandwich Shop, right? He
Yeah.
benefits when the trade show's
Absolutely.
in town. It's the hotels that are around the convention centers. It's the air industry. It's all the, you know, the live events.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's been to a concert in how long, right?
Yeah.
All that stuff has been canceled. So we're hoping that this consumer confidence can start with trade shows and then really start with getting those live events back and going.
Yeah.
We do see other countries. There's one in Mexico. There's a big one in Mexico that's happening. I think that's happening. I think they just said, hey, we're doing this thing.
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi's got one or two, and I think there's a couple in Europe, something like
Okay.
that they're trying to kick off early this year, like May time. So we're hoping that that's the case. We're hoping that we can see those come back, because I think once we kind of break the seal, you know, once
Sure,
we go
exactly.
across it, I think a lot of other people will start saying, okay, we're taking all the precautions. We're trying to be safe as we can be.
Yeah.
Without continually changing the way we go about our day-to-day lives, you know, in perpetuity. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hoping that that's sooner than later.
Yeah. And I don't think people that aren't in the trade show world don't realize how massive of an industry that is. But, you know, during normal times, there were massive shows happening all over the
everywhere,
world.
yeah.
And millions of people traveling just to go to trade shows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a massive industry. So we're happy that that's starting to at least
Absolutely.
pull out, and hoping for the best there.
Yep.
All right, Andrew, we're going to move into some shipping insights, some things that we try to do some little tips to give shippers
Yeah.
to help with their logistics and supply chain processes.
Yeah.
So it's a new year, which often means new relationships, right? In logistics, usually at the end of the year, shippers are signing contracts a lot of times if they do RFQs and bids. So there's often new carriers that are coming in town and they're starting to work with. So I wanted to ask you, what are a couple things that they can do to really start off on the right foot and set themselves up for success with a new carrier?
Sure. So we broke this down into 3 segments, right? We broke it down into 3 areas. And I'm going to kind of kick it off with the first one, and that's regarding the process. And what I mean by this is the actual process that information and knowledge is shared in terms of how you operate as a company. So often when you start a relationship, there's a lot of unknowns, and maybe it takes weeks or months, or even sometimes you'll operate for years without knowing one specific thing that somebody does. And so what we hope to always try to do is share the process, meaning we try to get the customer to give us what is important to them. And, you know, we'll outline it in the statement of work or, you know, some sort of operational procedure. But at the end of the day, we want to have a fluid, you know, discussion with them about their process, because so often we have the top line, you know, goal, right? Save money, ship faster, do something. But that process, something inside that process is going to have a surprise maybe, or something that maybe wasn't defined somewhere in the sales process or scope of work or something like that. And what we hope is that that's not a shock, but that's a structured conversation. So at the onset, we always look to have our customers, because they all have unique needs. They all have unique or special needs. They all have, their end customers have unique needs. And we want to make sure that we outline all that stuff as much as we can at the onset, just to make their process better. And that's all it is. It's to make their process better so that we can deliver the service that we know that they would benefit from the most or greatly enough. So that's really how we would start.
I think too, there's often an assumption there that all shippers and warehouses are run exactly the same.
Oh, sure, right?
Right. Oh, doesn't everyone
Don't
do
you
it
ship
like this?
freight? Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, actually, everybody does it differently.
Yeah, exactly. And vice versa, right? Every shipper ships differently.
Exactly.
You know, you have the different systems, different, you know, internal systems.
Yeah.
Mike in, you know, the corner office over there does this when this happens, those type of tribal knowledge areas. So, yeah, absolutely. Process is key. And the second thing that we we always talk about, and this is something that you care greatly about, in many areas, but it's transparency. It's being transparent with both, the shippers, with our agents, with our employee, everybody. It's something that it's critical to. So I want you to talk to us today a little bit about transparency and where you see this playing into kind of this, when starting off your new relationship as a shipper.
Sure. Yeah, it really ties into, understanding processes as well. So I don't know if it's intentional sometimes or non-intentional, but there's often some gamesmanship that happens when two parties, right, start working together again, and they don't always want to share everything. They say, look, let's tell them 80% of the details. The other 20% we'll kind of just leave out and see what they do and see what happens.
Intentionally or unintentionally.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Sometimes things have been happening for so long within a shipping company that they don't even remember, or they don't even think about it. They're so trained to just do what they do that they don't remember, oh, this was a problem and this is what we did to just kind of patch it up, or this is what we did for a temporary solution, or this is kind of just how we set up our operations.
Sure, yeah.
And so when we say be transparent, it's crucial that a shipper will share really all the knowledge they have about their shipping and logistics with a new carrier. Otherwise, what happens is they forget, they leave out some details. Well, what ends up happening? The carrier comes in and the shipper's like, hey, why didn't you do this? Or why did you do that? Well, it was never communicated. It was never talked about. It wasn't laid out. So there's unmet expectations, and that's just not a good way to start off a relationship. A shipper's only going to be happy, right, if the carrier's taking care of them. And the carrier's only going to be happy if they're making the shipper happy.
Oh, of course, right?
So, so it's really everyone's goal is to try to work together to give the best services possible. So when we say be transparent, it means, look, you might have some warts. You might have some challenges that you don't want to bring up during the sales process, but make sure you communicate those during an onboarding time to an operations team, because they're going to come up anyway. A new carrier is going to come in and they're going to see it all anyway. So be transparent up front, be open, be honest about some of the challenges. And that sets up the carrier to actually maybe provide some better solutions that you didn't have before.
That's a great point. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a fantastic point, is that there's ancillary benefits to being transparent from both sides, right? From the carrier side and the shipper side. So
absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that.
So, which leads us to our third one. We talk about sharing our processes. We talk about be transparent about both your processes and challenges that you're facing. And the third one is being patient.
Today's day and age, we're not taught to be patient.
We're not really taught to be patient. No. And in logistics, typically everything should go great right from the get-go, right?
Exactly, right? No, never a problem
We're
ever.
Instant gratification society, they say.
Everything's delivered in 2 hours. I think patience is really the cornerstone that kind of binds all this together. When you think about the idea of sharing your process, you think about the transparency. Well, then what, right? You've done all these things, then what? Well, then there's a time that you just have to be patient. There's going to be miscues from, in many cases, both sides, right? Either, a shipper thinks something should be happening faster, or a carrier thought they should be doing something different. At the end of the day, there's this idea that there's hope that we can be patient and accepting of, the train's getting started, let's make sure we're all on the same track type deal. And sometimes things take a little bit longer. So often a shipper moves to a carrier for various reasons, right? Is it, saving money? Is it saving time, delivering a better service, new service types, whatever it might be, new verticals, whatever it might be. And then there's this, from the shipper's point of view, they're hoping that they get to see that day one, and they should. They should want that. It's not a problem for them. They should want that. But so often it does require some level of patience for them to eventually see those, the results that they're trying to yield.
Yeah.
So, really, you can have your process, you can have your transparency, but I think patience is really more the realistic nature of these relationships. It's no different than a personal relationship, but, a new friend, a new acquaintance, something like that. So it's really about that patience that'll really bind this all together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think shipping can be complex. A lot of times it gets simplified to, I don't know, just send your truck here and we'll get freight. Well, inside of a warehouse and logistics teams, there's a lot happening, right? There's whole maps of warehousing and staging and bays and times and preferences and all that stuff that needs to happen. So, naturally there's going to be some of that's missed in the sales process. And again, when you actually have operations teams starting to work together, you need to be patient to make sure that stuff is communicated, make sure everyone learns it, understands it. Otherwise, I don't think you're really being fair to either party if you're not willing to do that.
To your point, the process, the transparency, that usually happens at one level of the organization, and then the actual execution happens at another level.
Yeah.
And that transference, there's some patience that's just required there. That's sometimes not accounted for. But I think when two companies, when two teams are trying to work towards a common goal, I think usually good can happen, and all that's required is patience to see that. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So our 3 tips for a shipper starting a new relationship with the carrier: share your process, be transparent, and be patient.
Absolutely, that's simple.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to roll into a little ARC company news and company culture. Andrew, I wanted to ask you, as a freight forwarder, we actually have agents all over the world that represent us in different countries. What do we do at the beginning of the year to help foster that relationship with our agents?
So I could talk forever about our agent relationships. So I'll try to keep it as tight and neat as possible. Really, our agents allow us to operate as ARC in countries all over the world. So whether it's Shanghai or Hong Kong, China, whether it's Taiwan, Busan, Korea, Germany, everywhere, these agents help execute and keep the promises we have to our customers. So at the end of the day, we have to make sure that these agent relationships are more than just a rate structure. We have to make sure we understand what that agent, how they operate, what's important to them. The values we state all these values that are important to us. This extends to our agent network as well. So it's critical for us to make sure that we hold these agents accountable. And at the beginning of the year, we normally have processes that require a lot more discussion, more, the theoretical setup discussions than the practical, we got to ship this for a customer discussions. And so that's usually saved for the beginning of the year. Things like, CTPAT, right? The trade partnership agreement to import easier. When we're doing our CTPAT re-up, we'll discuss, hey, you need to make sure these containers are done in this way. You need to sign these documents. Or when we know a customer is having something coming up in the year, they're going to have a big Q2, Q3, they're having some project go on. We try to always let our customers know, we try to always let our agents know ahead of time so that they can properly plan. They can start the discussions either with the ocean lines if there's something specific or unique, so that nobody's hit with something later on in the year that they weren't expecting.
Yeah. So
really at the beginning of the year, that's our goal, is to bring our agents up to speed with what's happening with us, our customers, and really make sure that the values are still being upheld as much as they were the year previous.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it comes back to relationships, right? We're always cultivating.
This whole industry, man. It's all
it really
relationships.
Is.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. That's great. Thanks for sharing that with us. That takes us to our last section this month, which is, of course, Did You Know?
Did you know?
Did you know?
My
section.
favorite section. What are you gonna teach me today,
I got
Matt?
something interesting, and it's shipping related. I just found this was fascinating.
Yep.
But until 1920, you could ship anything under 11 pounds via the U.S. Postal Service. Anything. There were actually people that shipped their babies via
out of here.
a mail carrier to relatives, maybe cross town, maybe to a different town. They would give the baby to a mail carrier and say, drop them off here. Because often mail postage was cheaper than a train ticket.
I don't see no problems there, right?
Right.
Unbelievable.
It's a mere 100 years ago, if you can imagine that.
That's crazy how much has changed in 100 years.
Yeah.
Well, maybe shipping your babies via the post office is a good thing to have changed in 100 years.
It's a good involvement to stop doing that for sure. So, yeah, thought that was a great tip.
That's great.
So,
Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Sure. So, guys, that's it for this January. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate it. And until next time, take care.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the month.